On a Thursday night in November 2021, the staff of the Clearwater Marine Aquarium didn't stand on the deck. They climbed into the water. They wrapped their arms around a 400-pound dolphin, and they held her as she took her last breath. Her name was Winter, and before she died, she saved more lives than anyone ever expected. But to understand what she gave the world, you have to go back 16 years, to the moment when a baby dolphin was drowning in her own body. And 3,000 miles away, to a soldier who had decided he would never walk again. This is the true story of two survivors who never met, and the impossible invention that saved them both. It was December 10th, 2005. The waters of Mosquito Lagoon near Cape Canaveral, Florida were calm, but underneath something was dying. A fisherman spotted something thrashing in the water. It was a baby Atlantic bottlenose dolphin, only 2 or 3 months old. She wasn't swimming, she was tangled. A crab trap line, a heavy, unforgiving rope, had wrapped itself around her tail. Dolphins are powerful, but they panic, and as she pulled, the rope tightened. It acted like a tourniquet. By the time the fisherman found her, the line had cut off the blood supply to her tail flukes completely. She was rushed to the Clearwater Marine Aquarium. The veterinary team worked around the clock, but the damage was too severe. The tissue was dead. The tail, which is the very engine of a dolphin's life, could not be saved. It simply fell off. They named her Winter. She was alive. But the team knew something the public didn't. The real danger was just beginning. Without a tail, Winter couldn't swim. She couldn't even stay afloat. If they let go of her, she would sink to the bottom and drown. For the first 4 or 5 weeks, the staff held her around the clock. They walked her in circles around the pool, keeping her head above water, taking shifts through the night. "We had no plans," the aquarium's CEO later admitted. "Nobody knew what to do." Then Winter did something no one expected. She taught herself to move. She figured out that if she wiggled her whole body side to side, like a shark, she could propel herself forward. It was incredible to watch, but it was also killing her. Dolphins are built to swim one way, up and down. But Winter's shark swim was twisting her spine in a way it was never designed to bend. She was developing severe scoliosis. If she kept swimming like this, the torque would eventually crush her internal organs. Her own will to survive was destroying her from the inside. The team was paralyzed. Without intervention, Winter would either be euthanized or die a slow, painful death from spinal collapse. She needed a tail, but no one had ever built a prosthetic tail for a dolphin. The clock was ticking, and then a man in Sarasota turned up his car radio. Kevin Carroll wasn't a veterinarian. He was a prosthetist, an expert who builds artificial limbs for humans. He worked for the Hanger Clinic, helping amputees walk again. He heard the news report about the tailless dolphin. Most people would change the station. Carroll turned up the volume. "My heart went out to her," he later said. "I thought I could probably put a tail on her." It sounded simple. It was anything but. Carroll called his colleague Dan Strzemka, and they made a decision that would confuse a lot of people. They would work on Winter in their free time. No funding, no recognition, just 2 men trying to save a dolphin. The backlash was immediate. "Why are you wasting time on a dolphin?" colleagues asked. "There are humans who need help. Veterans are coming back from Iraq without legs. Children are waiting for prosthetics. And you're spending weekends on a fish?" Carroll's answer was simple. "Some people play golf in their free time. We'd rather spend hours on a dolphin." They drove to the aquarium and examined Winter's stump. They had walked into an engineering nightmare. The first prototypes were disasters. "Funny-looking contraptions," one of them later admitted. Nothing worked. Human prosthetics attached to bone, a knee, a hip, a residual limb. Winter had none of that. Her stump was tapered, cone-shaped, and slippery. And she lived in salt water. But the biggest problem was her skin. Dolphin skin is incredibly sensitive. It sheds constantly. The standard materials used for human prosthetics would rub her raw, causing sores and infections. They could kill her faster than the scoliosis. They built prototype after prototype. All of them failed. The attachments were either too tight, causing pain, or too loose, and the water would rip them off. 18 months passed. Winter was growing. Her spine was getting worse. They needed a material that didn't exist, something soft like a pillow, sticky like glue, but durable enough to survive the ocean. So they invented it. They had no idea it would end up saving human lives. Carol and Strzemka went back to the lab. They mixed, tested, and failed. Until finally they created something strange. It was a thermoplastic elastomer, a silicone-based gel that was incredibly soft and tacky. They formed it into a sleeve like a sock. When they slid it onto Winter's stump, it didn't slide off. It created a suction seal against her skin without irritating it. They called it Winter's Gel. Now came the moment of truth. They slid the gel sleeve onto Winter. They attached the carbon fiber tail to the sleeve. They lowered her into the water. Winter hesitated. She had been swimming like a shark for 18 months, but then she felt the resistance of the tail. She pumped her body, not side to side, but up and down. For the first time since she was a baby, Winter swam like a dolphin. The team watched in silence. Some of them were crying. The ticking clock had stopped. If the story ended here, it would be a great animal rescue. But Winter's miracle was just getting started, because the gel they invented for a dolphin was about to save a soldier's life, and his story had already begun, a year before Winter was even born. September 11th, 2004, Balad Air Base, Iraq. Senior Airman Brian Kolfage was standing on the flight line when the rocket hit. A 107mm explosive landed 3 feet away from him. When he woke up, both of his legs were gone, one above the knee, one below. His right hand was gone. At 23 years old, Brian Kolfage became the most severely wounded American serviceman to survive the Iraq War. He was flown to Walter Reed. He endured dozens of surgeries. The doctors rebuilt what they could, but the skin grafts covering his stumps were fragile, a patchwork of borrowed tissue holding his body together. When he was finally fitted for prosthetic legs, the nightmare continued, and it would push him to a breaking point. The standard sockets were agony. The friction against his grafted skin was unbearable. Every step felt like walking on broken glass. The sores wouldn't heal. Brian tried. He tried for months. But eventually he made a decision. He told his prosthetist he was done. He would rather spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair than endure that pain for another day. And that's when Kevin Carroll walked into his room. Carroll looked at Brian's wounds. He looked at the raw, irritated skin. And he thought of a dolphin in Florida. "I've got something," Carroll said. "It was made for a dolphin named Winter, but I think it might work for you." Brian didn't care if it was made for an alien. He just wanted to walk. Carroll took Winter's gel, the same formula they'd invented for the dolphin, and lined Brian's prosthetic sockets with it. Brian put on the legs. He stood up. The pain was gone. The gel cushioned his scars the same way it cushioned Winter's stump. The friction that had been destroying his skin was eliminated. Brian Kolfage didn't just walk out of that hospital. He went on to marry, to have children, to live a full life, standing on legs that were made possible because a team of engineers refused to give up on a baby dolphin. Suddenly, the waste of time dolphin project wasn't a curiosity. It was a medical revolution. Winter's gel is now used by thousands of amputees around the world. Veterans, children, accident survivors. All of them walking without pain because of a substance that didn't exist until a dolphin needed it. But while Winter was becoming a symbol of hope, the aquarium itself was drowning. David Yates, the CEO, didn't sugarcoat it. "We really did work in a crappy building," he later said. When Hollywood scouts arrived and offered to fix the place up for filming, Yates looked around at the decaying facility and laughed. "I didn't know you could paint rust." They were a non-profit rescue operation hanging by a thread. They had saved the Dolphin, but they were struggling to keep the lights on. Then the cameras rolled. The movie Dolphin Tale was released in 2011. Morgan Freeman played a character based on Kevin Carroll, but the real star was Winter, playing herself, performing for the cameras, hitting her marks with a prosthetic tail. And Winter wasn't just performing, she was thriving. Yates called her the ultimate social dolphin of all time. She adored the attention, the cameras, the crew. "I'd venture to say," he said, "that the 4 months of filming were the happiest 4 months of her life. She had a blast." The film earned nearly $96 million. The small, struggling aquarium became a global landmark. But the real magic wasn't the movie. It was what happened after. Winter became a pilgrimage site for the broken. Children with missing limbs came to see the dolphin who swam without a tail. Veterans came to meet the animal whose body had healed their own. They looked at her and saw proof that different didn't mean done. The aquarium set up free programs for wounded veterans and children with disabilities. Every few weeks they would come. People who had lost limbs, lost hope, lost their reason to keep going. "I've seen soldiers cry," Yates said. "I cannot say how inspiring it is to see a tough military guy say that a dolphin has given him a reason to try." One day, Kevin Carroll was at the aquarium when 2 little girls arrived. One of them had lost a leg and most of her fingers. Winter was resting at the bottom of the pool, ignoring the crowd. But when those 2 girls approached the glass, she rose. The girl said, "I want to sing a song." She started to sing, and Winter, hearing her through the glass, began to whistle, her signature Tweety Bird sound. The girl sang. The dolphin answered. Carroll watched them, the broken child and the broken animal, communicating in a language no one else understood. All their troubles, he said later, just disappeared. Moments like that happened again and again. For 16 years, Winter lived at Clearwater. Every single day, the same staff fed her, adjusted her prosthetic, and swam beside her. They knew her moods. They knew when she wanted attention and when she wanted to be left alone. They knew the sound she made when she was happy, that Tweety Bird whistle, and the way she'd nudge them with her nose when she wanted more fish. She had outlived every prediction. The dolphin, who was supposed to die at 2, had become a 16-year-old celebrity. But more than that, she had become part of their lives. Then, in November 2021, she fell ill. A gastrointestinal infection. Her vital signs dropped. The staff tried everything, but her body was failing. On her final night, the people who had fed her, swam with her, and adjusted her tail every single day made a decision. They didn't watch from the deck. They climbed into the water. And they held her. The aquarium's statement was simple. She passed while being cradled by her caregivers. Think about that. A 400-pound animal who had spent her life bridging the gap between species took her last breath in a human embrace. Winter never met Brian Kolfage. She never knew about the thousands of amputees walking on her gel. She was just a dolphin who lost her tail and refused to die. But because a fisherman didn't look away, because a vet didn't give up when the tail fell off, because a prosthetist didn't change the radio station, because 2 men spent their free time inventing a strange, sticky gel for an animal. There are soldiers standing at their children's graduations today. There are kids running on playgrounds who were told they'd never walk. The aquarium's CEO put it simply, Winter's message is not a new message. It's a new way of expressing an old message. People look at her and think, if Winter can do it, so can I. Winter lost her tail so that others could find their footing. And that is a story worth telling. This story is based on true events. Winter was rescued on December 10, 2005, and lived at the Clearwater Marine Aquarium for 16 years. She passed away on November 11, 2021, held by her caregivers. Winter's gel, invented to save her life, is now used by thousands of human amputees worldwide. Quotes from Kevin Carroll, Dan Strzemka, and David Yates are taken from documented interviews. Some scenes have been dramatized for narrative purposes.